We're back to the UX webinar series on travel. We're really happy to be with you. Our webinar today is called Using Rapid Prototyping to Validate Your Travel App. We are very lucky to have a distinguished set of guests. Some of them new, some of them from the old season or the other episodes. First off is one of our steady co-hosts, which is Miguel Medina. He's a UX UI designer at Nearsoft, but he can tell you more. Hi, Miguel.
Hi everyone, very happy to be here, and I'm very excited to co-host this webinar with you, Jorge. It's been a long time.
I know, I guess I was busy, but I'm happy you invited me back in.
Yeah.
Also a newcomer when it comes to webinars, but he's got, I guess, like 2 or 3 years under his belt of developing travel software. His name is Pedro Duarte. Pedro, welcome. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thank you, Jorge. I'm just a web developer working on the travel industry for like 2 years now. And mainly I have been focusing on R&D projects. So thank you, Jorge.
Nice. And as you know, you might not remember me, but as you know, I'm Jorge Simons. I'm a content creator for the UX team, and I'll be your host for today. Anyway, just a reminder, the UX team is part of a bigger family here at Nearsoft, and we have content creators, business developers, marketing people, lots and lots of UX and UI designers, researchers, and this couldn't be possible without them. So a quick shout out and a very big hug to them. Some of them are in the States right now. I think Misael is in Austin, so yeah. Hi Misael if you're watching. Anyway, let's get into it. Here's the agenda for today. We're going to be answering some questions. Number 1 is, what is user validation? Number 2 is, why rapid prototyping can help your travel app? Then some easy steps to validate fast, which is basically the topic for today. Then a quick summary of everything with some takeaways, and a Q&A sessions. If you have questions, please hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag NearsofUXWebinar, and we'll be happy to take those questions and forward them to our guests. But anyway, time for me to let the action begin. Go ahead.
Thanks. I would like to start with a short story on why validation is crucial and why we need to validate before building something. So we have 2 characters on this story. One is a businessman and the other is a customer. And this businessman has a great idea. He just wants to sell watermelon juice. So he's in love with this idea and he wants to put that idea into production to launch it into the market and get a return of investment. So he's very excited. He launched the product, the juice, but somehow when he launched the product into the market, he realizes that it doesn't have the impact that he expected. So the customer, in the other hand, it's not entirely in love with what he offered. So the businessman questions himself, what did I did wrong? What happened? And the answer is, well, if you had the time to validate your idea that you were so in love with, perhaps you could have adapted into what the customer wanted, which was coca juice. So if we have a proper time for a validation process, we can adapt the idea, shape it, or improve it to something that the customer will love and want. And in the end, it's a win-win situation for both of them. The businessman will be happy with all the money, and the customer will be pleased with the product. So right now, I'm going to show some serious metrics, and let's get serious with this. 24% of users abandon an app after having just one bad experience. This is related with the story that I just told you, that it's very crucial that validation is in all the stages on the product development process, because we will prevent those bad experiences from happening in the first place. And 63% of users visit an app less than 10 times. This suggests us that the struggle is real for these companies. And there are having trouble making them to come back to use it, or even converting them. But why? Why does it happen? It's like the $1,000,000 question, I guess. But one of the reasons is because most user experience issues aren't identified until after we release. This means that a high percentage of all the reviews from the customers are are seen, sorry, in the reviews on the Google Play or Play Store, which is bad because at that time the company or the businessmen are just wasted all the money, the effort, and the time building that product just to at the end have a product that it won't be uh, fulfill the needs of the user, and it won't make an impact in the market. So let's be clear in something here. It's common to have a minor bugs after a release, but we have to make that line very to differentiate the line between having minor bugs and a catastrophic issues with the experience that will at the end uh, prevent the user to completely convert into that product and have in return to that. So this is why validation is crucial before uh, building something. And I think Pedro has something to explain to
Yeah.
us a bit of your experience with this issue.
Yeah, sure. So this also happens a lot in the travel industry. So let's say, for example, that I want to go to some place, let's say Africa or some other that I want to visit, and I found a page that the flights are cheap. But the main problem is that it is in a language I don't speak. Let's say, for example, Japanese. The first thing I want to search is for a place or a button to change the language, and it's like a misfortune to me that I can find one, or at least it's not that easily accessible. So what I'm gonna do, the first thing I'm gonna do is like I'm gonna get frustrated because hey, I want to book and I can book because I can understand what I'm doing. I just click in random buttons. I say, oh come on. And the second thing I'm going to do is to leave the app as is. I'm not going to continue with the flow. I mean, it's like I can understand what I'm doing.
Totally.
So, the first then, what I'm gonna do is like go look for another page, maybe a little bit more expensive, but I'm going to book in that new page instead of the cheaper one. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Pedro. And well, user validation. We are very clear now what user validation is. It's to make sure that your product is it's going to be usable before building something, to make the improvements needed to make the best of it. So the reasons why user validation is very important is because we can identify real needs with the product, and we can identify what's wrong or missing. In the case of the story that I told you, the businessman could have prevented what was missing and find the real needs of the customer. So it's very important to identify what's wrong or missing, to adapt and to improve what we already have to something that is even greater. And the last one, and I think it's one of the most important because it's related to rework and investing a lot of resources to build something that is going not to be useful, is because it saves time, money, and effort. So how can we do user validation? We have now the importance why we should use user validation, but how? One of my favorite methods is rapid prototyping because it's a fast way to gather valuable insight from users. And first of all, what is rapid prototyping? It's a methodology used during the early stages of the product development process for testing new ideas faster. And whether you're testing an app or a website, it consists only on translating your app's ideas into sketches, wireframes, or even mockups in order to gather feedback from potential users with the purpose of finding critical errors or even starting the development process. So the steps for rapid prototyping and applying them into your travel app are: first, we need to build the prototype. It's very obvious, but uh, we need to have some considerations for building the prototype. The second one is to test the prototype, and the last one is interpreting the feedback gathered from the sessions of the testing. So the first thing first is we need to find the scope of what we want to validate. In this case, here we have on the screen workflow from to book the flight. So we're going to select the scope in this scenario for the baggage selection only. So once we have that scope, we can continue to build the prototype. But first, we need to define the fidelity of the prototype, and it will vary from two different types. The first one is paper prototypes, and I particularly use these kind of prototypes to validate ideas, and because it allows me to have a one-on-one session with the user and show them just a quick sketch to validate whether the idea that is in my mind is well represented and if it makes sense to them. And in this kind of prototypes, it's not really necessary to focus on the details. It's just a quick sketches, so we don't want to lose time, so we want to validate fast. The second ones are wireframe prototypes. In this kind of prototypes, it's detail. It's more, but it's still a low fidelity prototype. And here we can have a wider number of details and interactions that the user will test. And I generally use these kind of prototypes to for usability testing because it allows me to have more scenarios in which the user can make tasks. So the last one is high fidelity mock-up prototypes, and these ones are the ones that look exactly how the product will be in the real world, and it covers the whole functionality and all the interactions, and also it allows us to validate whether the styling, look and feel is looks okay for the user. And I think, Pedro, you mentioned that you have experience working with high fidelity mock prototype rather than paper and wireframe, right?
Yes. Yes, that's correct. So, first, I'm going to give you 3 tips that you can add in your high fidelity mocks, so you can have a lot of successful with your mocks. The first is that just display the important information. Here we can see the example of the title. In the title, I just want to know where am I. I don't want to know anything else. I don't want to know what's next. I don't want to know how much I have been spending in the flight, nor anything like that. Just display the title, and that's it. Maybe a button to go back, and maybe a burger menu to show the more important details like your shopping cart and all that stuff. But just minor things, especially because we are in handheld and we don't have a lot of space to display all that kind of information. The second one is to use the correct position of the things. So let's say, for example, we have the flight number, the departure, and our arrival. So that thing is going to be at the top of our application, and then again at the bottom is going to be the selection. Then you can scroll and get more selection and all that kind of things. And the third tip is going to be use color to show how the user interacts with the page or with the app. Here we have 2 examples. The color blue. The color blue help us to identify positive things that the user can do. So for example, add a baggage, add a seat, or anything. Could be anything. Or to continue with the flow, like button continue. The second example is going to be the red color. The red color is going to help the user to do like not that positive things, like remove things, for example the bags, or go back in the flow, like cancel what you are doing right now.
Ooh, that's pretty cool insight. Thanks, you, Pedro. And well, moving to the second step, test the prototype, we need first to gather the right users. This is because we need to gather accurate and valuable feedback. And some of the recommendations that we're going to give today is to recruit 5 to 7 participants, because it is fine number to validate. If we validate to more people, it won't change much the results of the feedback. So 5 to 7 are okay, and we need to avoid at all costs family and friends for these recruiting sessions, because it won't be the same if I ask my mother to test an application for travel if I know that he doesn't get along well with technology and she's not an active traveler. But if we select an active traveler for the feedback session, that will change entirely the insights that he's going to give us. So it's very, very important to keep this in mind. And once we have the right users, we're going to move to the feedback sessions. And the feedback sessions can vary from interviews to usability testings, and whether we're using both of them, it's very important to create a short script prior to the meeting, because we want to be prepared for what we need to ask, or the task that we need to deliver to the user to perform, and always asking why. Why? Because we need to know the reasoning behind the answers that they are giving us, and taking as many notes as you can. This point is connected with the third steps, because we are going to gather all the notes that we took, and we're going to find patterns.
Before we get into the third step, I have a newbie question. How can I choose between? You said there were paper, high fidelity mockups, and wireframes, I think. What does it depend on? Which of them I pick? My time or the complexity of the feature?
Well, it depends on what you want to do. For example, in my case, when I'm building something from scratch, I generally use paper prototype just to test or validate the idea of what I want to translate visually.
Okay.
So that can make sense to the person that I'm talking to. So, but if I want to test or validate specific tasks in the app, I will choose wireframe because it offers a more detailed version of prototype.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
No problem. And well, where was I? Okay.
Back to step 3.
Back to step 3. Yes. Gathering all the notes. Once we have all the notes, we're going to find patterns in the information. What I mean by patterns is, let's say that we interviewed 5 persons, and 4 people mention exactly the same idea, which is they are having trouble typing something on the search input in the app. So 4 people told that, and it's a very recurrent feedback, so we need to pay attention to that instead of having just one user saying that he doesn't like the color of the background because it's not his favorite color. So that's something that won't serve us exactly to change or improve the application, because it's subjective, and that's why we don't need to take feedback literally. And that's the reason it's so important to find patterns in the information, to gather all the information that is connected with the same idea. And we have an example here that we're going to show you about how to interpret information and how we found in the example.
Yeah. So let's see here our mock. Here we can see that there are some confusing information. What it is confusing? Well, apparently 4 of the 5 users that we interviewed says something like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm going to buy the baggage for the arrival or the departure time. I don't know." So let's say, for example, that the people going from New York to Japan is going like traveling lightly. So, for example, just one carry-on. But when they're returning, they buy a lot of souvenirs, and I need a bigger baggage. But how can I say what's the difference between those two in this application? Well, we don't know. So that's one of the feedback that they gave us. They didn't know how they were buying the bags. And some of them suggested, oh, let's put another screen for the inbound and the outbound, or just highlight where I'm choosing, and if I finish, then continue, then change again the highlight. And there were a lot of things that they suggested. But since, as Miguel said, we just have to find the pattern that everyone agrees. The information was confusing. And then again, it arises to another question. When is it time to stop validating? As you can see, this was our second iteration, and the user wasn't happy. We had to find another iteration, a third one. So after applying the same structure to the different users, seems like 90% of them were happy with our application, and also he'll finish the flow without any major problems. Oh yeah, I'm happy. Now I can book my flight and go to Japan. So this is one of the metrics. Also, like I would say, Miguel, like you can say that after the second or third iteration, it is okay to stop.
I think it will depend on the metrics shown on the test or the interviews. If the percentage is high enough of the, let's say, the task completion of the user, perhaps it's okay to move along with another scope, because with that in mind, we won't ever move forward and launch the application if we keep validating. So we have to like find a balance between the percentage of task completion and what the user said with the application. So I think it's vital to find a balance and to keep moving forward to the next scope. But what have worked for me is 2 or 3 rounds of iteration, and that's like the time that I usually need.
Yeah, and I agree. But sometimes you have to stop, because if you don't stop, you can never build your app. So you can never have a population of 100% of people happy with your application. Obviously, there are gonna be people that are not happy, but you have to stop sometimes, somewhere, and gather all the information and start building the app.
I was reminded of yesterday we were talking about this, and we stumbled upon this specific screen, and I read it like, when is it time to stop validating? And I'm like, never. And then Pedro was like, no, then no, you can send anything to the market if you never stop validating. So
Yeah,
Exactly.
so just a reminder for you people that know little from the subject like I do, you need to stop validating at some point.
yeah.
Get some stuff done. And I think we're about to close. Here are our world famous takeaways. Drum rolls, please. Brrr. We needed like a sound effect. Arturo, which is like our cameraman, can deliver those later.
Yeah.
Anyway, number 1 is create quick prototypes. Remember, you should test stuff, and now you know you have one method to choose and different types of prototypes to build. Second is listen to what users have to say. What would have happened if the greedy businessman would have known that people wanted to buy coconut and not watermelon, right?
Right.
He would be rich from the start.
Exactly. That's the point.
And I guess not making people happy, making money, both anyway. Number 3 is improve your prototype and test again. Not forever, but yeah, improve it and test again. I guess as features grow more complex, you might need a more specific way of doing it. So you might choose high fidelity mockups over paper prototypes or something like that. And the other part, which is integral to all parts of testing, is don't be afraid to fail. I guess the answer to validating is you can never be sure 100% of something, but it's way better to know 60% or 70% for sure rather than 0% and be selling watermelon, when people want coconut. So I guess that's sort of the... I just love the story, so I keep bringing it up. Is there something you comment before we take questions from the takeaways? Something you might want to tell the people right now? Okay.
I don't know if we have some questions.
Let me check. Questions. We have one here. What happens after iterating 2 or 3 times and you need to move on to a new feature? Should I prototype from 0, or is it the same from a different feature? I guess what they're saying is, I tested feature 1. Should I use the same technique or adapt it to feature 2?
Well, I think it will depend. If you have tested that feature with, I don't know, wireframes or high fidelity mockups, it's not. I believe it's not needed to go back to paper prototypes and start over again, and then wireframes and so on. So I think you can choose the fidelity of whether you of your last testing. So
Okay. Whatever you're using
Yeah.
might work again. Okay. We have a question from Tim. What do you guys do to avoid sociable acceptable answers during a usability test?
socially acceptable.
Yeah, I guess he means like, do you like this? Yes. Like people always try to answer to please the person that's asking.
Well, the first thing that I do is, first of all, not ask yes or no questions.
Okay.
So I kind of make the conversation more like asking why you're, I don't know, why do you are presenting this behavior with that, or what is it that you don't entirely understand, so we can have more solid answers and not like I don't like this because blah.
Yeah, I remember I was a guinea pig for you, the UX team once, and I was one of the testers. I think it was a gaming app or something you wanted me to test, and part of what you kept telling me is we're not gonna do anything, just sit there and do the task, and then just get us through your mental process when doing the task. And that sort of got me in trouble because I didn't like some of the parts that I was seeing. So what was really comforting to me as a user is what you told me is there's no wrong and right answers. Just tell us what you're thinking and what
Yeah,
you're feeling
exactly.
as you go by. So I guess that made me be a mean person to you guys.
Yeah, but we need to know the reasoning behind that you don't like something. So
Yeah.
that's why we ask always why and make the conversation flow in that way.
Okay. So it's all about getting people in uncomfortable answers, I guess.
True answers.
Yeah, true answers. I'm just kidding. Anyway, I think that's all for the questions today. If we get any more, we might we will answer them by email. So keep sending them. So thanks. And if you want to know more, you can contact us. Miguel Medina. Miguel Medina's email is mmedina@nearsoft.com. You can also catch some of his writings and posts at ux.nearsoft.com, or his really hard to spell Twitter page. So there you go.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. And we also have our guest today, Pedro Duarte. His email is pduarte@nearsoft.com. You can also email him and get more answers out of these experts. So I guess that's all from us today. Say bye, guys.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
See
Have
you
a good
next
one.
time.